Number 5. A couple years ago, I worked at a 24-hour diner. Sometimes I worked the night shift. One day I was at Walmart after an afternoon shift that I worked in my painfully recognizable uniform. The guy in front of me in line had these crazy eyes and was taking his time bagging up his groceries before he eventually said hello. So I just said hi back. He said, "Oh, you work at the diner?" I replied yes. He then left the store, I bagged my groceries, and walked out a couple minutes later. Well, the guy was still outside and saw me get into my car. He didn't follow me though, or at least so I thought, and that was that. So fast forward 2 weeks. I'm working the night shift and it's 2 a.m. I was sitting outside smoking a cigarette and talking on the phone. This white van then pulls up and guess who hops out? He then says, "Hey girl, I've been looking for you. You remember me, do you?" His eyes were bugged out of his head and he had a few bodies in his van with him. I stuck my phone in my pocket, but he grabbed my wrist and started pulling me closer to the van and said, "Come on and hang out with us." I replied, "Sorry, but no." I then yanked away and started backing towards the door, but he kept asking if he could at least get my number. I immediately ran inside to the back and told my extremely large coworker what had happened, but they'd driven away by the time we got back. 2 nights later, one of the windows was shot out during the night shift that I luckily wasn't working, but my coworkers say it was a bunch of guys that drove a white van. Number 4. About a decade ago, when I was 19, I lived in a small college town with my sister and her best friend. I worked graveyard shifts at a gas station that was almost a 10-minute walk from my house. The town was very safe and I never had any incidents walking alone at night before, so I didn't really have an issue walking to work late at night tonight. It was a Thursday night and it was about 10:40 p.m. when I left for work. The road was pretty dead and it felt like I was the only living soul traveling along the road, until a white sedan pulled up to the left of me. He rolled down his passenger window and looked to be in his early 50s. He bluntly said, "Hey sexy, where are you going?" I just glared at him and continued walking, ignoring him. He then drove, keeping up with my pace, and asked, "Do you want to go to the bar with me?" I just told him no and continued walking. He got annoyed and tried guilting me into going by saying he was lonely and just wanted a girl to keep him company. But I yelled for him to go away. He then got angry and pulled a gun out of his side door panel and pointed it at me, yelling, "Get in the car, you're going to the bar with me." I was internally flipping out at this point and my mind was racing trying to figure out how to get out of this. But thankfully an idea came to my mind. I just yelled a lie. I yelled, "My dad is the sheriff of this town. If I go missing, he will find you." I don't know if he actually believed me or realized I was more work than I was worth to him, but he screamed some obscenities and then sped away. I stood there frozen for a full minute, taking in what had just happened, but then I came to my senses and sprinted to work where my supervisor comforted me. I then filed a police report. After this, I never walked to work by myself again. Number 3. I'm a baker by trade. Therefore, graveyard shifts are basically my livelihood. This happened a couple of years back when I used to catch trains to work. I work in a suburban area of a pretty small city. It was around 12:45 at night. My shift started at 1, so I got off the train and started walking towards my work, which is roughly about 5 minutes from the train station. I was walking casually, listening to music through my headphones, when this guy suddenly jumped out of the bush in front of me. He says, "I was nearly going to shoot you, mate. I thought you were someone else." At first, I thought he was joking, so I laughed it off and he responded, "What, you don't believe me?" He then pulled a pistol out of his jacket pocket. At this point, I was trembling, so I just said, "Have a good day, mate," and smiled and walked away. I then went across the road and bolted to work without even looking behind me. I've never been so afraid in my entire life. Fast forward about a week or so later, I saw a picture of him on the local newspaper and he was arrested for attempted murder. Number 2. So just for some context, I'm 5'2" and about 90 pounds. I'm fairly small and without makeup I look like I'm in my mid-teens rather than the 23 that I am. So I was walking my dog a couple months ago when she got distracted by a really shiny car leaving the park. The guy in it noticed my attention due to my dog and decided to circle the block and repark his car next to where I was standing. The man then rolled down his window and began talking to me. He looked to be in his mid-60s with a Burt Reynolds-esque tan going on. The first thing I noticed though was that he was shirtless. It was kind of odd because it was in the low 40s and really windy. It was weird but not alarming. He started asking about my dog, what her name was, how old she was, etc. He then asked for my name and how I liked his car. By this point, my dog had lost all interest in the car and was trying to get me to keep walking. I hadn't had coffee that morning, so I really wasn't in the mood for a conversation with a random stranger while the wind whipped my hair in my face. Trying to be polite, I told him it was a nice car, but I didn't tell him my name. He asked again for my name and started complimenting me. He then told me to come closer and that I should see the car better. He then added that the car was recently cleaned and insisted that I come take a look. At this point, I'm absolutely done. I made an excuse about needing to get home and walked as fast as possible towards some of the other people in the park, in the opposite direction of my house so that he didn't see which direction I'd be going. I wasn't even really upset about some old man trying to lure me into my car. I was more upset that he did it in the middle of the day and only 100 feet away from some other people. Also, it didn't even occur to me until later how young I looked and all the awful implications that could have brought up. Number 1. This must have been around 8th grade. It was late at night and I was extremely bored. It gets really hot in the desert area that I live in even at night, but I decided to go for a walk. As usual, the roads were empty, which isn't uncommon for a small town. I was wearing shorts and a tank top but was still sweating at 11:30 at night. The pavement radiated the heat that it had absorbed from the sun and I could feel it through my flip-flops. My plan was to head to the neighborhood park because I had grass that was watered at night and would generally provide some relief from the heat. I only made it a few blocks before I saw him. Quite a bit down the road, there was a hugely tall man walking towards me on the same side of the road. He was on the wrong side technically, and his gaze freaked me out a little, so I crossed to the other side. As we both continued to walk toward each other on opposite sides, I noticed he was wearing a trench coat, a full-length trench coat in 100-degree heat. We passed under a street lamp at the same time and made eye contact. This was apparently a big mistake. He immediately started running at me diagonally across the road, so I bolted. I could hear his motorcycle boots pounding the pavement behind me. Luckily, I was a pretty fast runner as a kid, but one of my flip-flops broke. I tripped, but I didn't fall. I could hear his breath closing in on me, so I ditched the other flip-flop and kept running straight on over the rocks and broken glass to get home. As I rounded the corner to my house, I no longer heard his stomping. With bloody feet, I flew up the stairs and locked the door. I was home alone, so I turned up the TV and hid in the back bedroom. I never found out who this guy was or why he was after me, but let's just hope that we don't meet again. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep updated with our videos.